I'm very much into understanding behaviour. Behaviour drives everything. And when you look at the industry as a whole, and certainly big pockets of the industry, recruiters are employing staff for doing the things they do. And typically the foundation of that process is commission. And therefore a recruiter that is reliant on earning commission is going to behave in a way that says, I need to create a placement because that's how I get to put food on the table. And there are some horror stories out there, one of which I've experienced in my sort of 15, 20 years. But, you know, an example, and of course I'm looking at the worst here, and I'm not suggesting it's the basis and it's the norm, but you know, people are placing people and being paid the fees that's been agreed, whatever. And then sort of 3 or 4 months later, they may be reapproaching those people and say, I've got another placement for you. And that's the bad behaviour of the industry. And that's where, you know, the good agencies are having to fight a reputation that is, whether we like it or not, quite common. So what do you feel about, you know, the industry structure that is causing the behaviours and creating and influencing the behaviours that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. And I could, you know, give you examples of how the industry is trying to stamp out bad behavior and all those kind of things. But fundamentally, it comes down to one thing. If you're talking about, you know, the type of recruitment agencies that you're talking about, it's a sales job. They're employing salespeople, you know, to make a sale. It's a bit of a strange sales job because, you know, you have to find someone with a vacancy, you have to find a candidate. It's kind of a two-way thing and sell to both of those. But ultimately, it's a sales job. The key skills that they look for when they recruit consultants for those types of agencies are sales skills. It's also very short term. You know, they're going from month to month to quarter, and it encourages that behavior, but also encourages that sort of short term thinking. And that, I think, drives a lot of what we're talking about, which is why over the last sort of 10 years or so, certainly in the bigger companies, they've taken more and more recruitment in-house to take that part out of it and focus on what's really going on. We want the right people for the right roles who are going to stay because we all work for the same company. We want them to stay. So I think it's that is the issue with it, is that it's a short-term thinking sales role that's very commission and target driven, and that, you know, that's the foundation for everything you've described.
So when you look at companies that are going through a traditional route of recruitment, whether they're doing it in-house or going through an agency, and they then bring some candidates into the business and they start, you know, reviewing, as you said a little while ago, the Word document CV that says I can work individually or as part of a team. You know, the scripted element of every CV.
Yeah, all written by ChatGPT these days as well. So yeah, all the same.
What are we getting wrong? What are the fundamentals that employers are perhaps missing, getting wrong, or need to adapt?
So I think that one of the biggest issues is when people think about recruitment, they're going to recruit someone, especially if they've not recruited someone for their team before, it's not something that they do all of the time. People tend to think back to how they were recruited. So, well, I had a CV, I had an interview, I had all these things. And then people also bring a lot of bias to that process in terms of what they think good looks like. And that's just true across the board, across the world. That's how people think about recruitment. Now, if you take a step back and look at some of the science that has been done behind this, you know, in the psychology, occupational psychology world, you know, using a CV and an interview in an unstructured way to recruit someone tells you absolutely nothing. In fact, their past experience doesn't tell you much about how they'll perform in your company, because there's a whole thing about context as well. So, you know, I look back at my career, I had one job where I was just not the right fit for that job, and I, you know, hands up, I was terrible at it, and I left before I got fired. But then I went on in my next job. I was very successful. I remember bumping into my old boss, and her saying to me, "It's like, you've got a job, you're managing people." Well, you know, she was just confused by the whole thing, and it was like, well, no, I wasn't. It wasn't that I'm a bad person or I didn't have any skills. I was just in the wrong job, and you weren't the right manager for me, even though my CV told you otherwise. So, I think it's almost kind of like you have to start this kind of blank piece of paper and say, actually, what is it that's going to predict performance? What biases are we bringing to the process? And then I think there's the chance of making better hires, and also just understanding that someone's potential to learn is perhaps a bigger thing than some of the skills they have. I mean, certainly what we've seen in the last 5 years, and I think it's been accelerated by the pandemic, is a lot of the skills that people use in jobs go out of date very quickly. So, the shelf life of even some of the technical skills is very, very short. So if you're employing someone for the long term, and if you're running a small business, that's what you want to do. You don't want to keep recruiting. You don't want to have to lose key people. It's their ability, obviously their ability to fit in the context of that business, but also their ability to learn new skills and grow within that business. And I think sometimes people just look at someone's past experience. It's like, have they done this job before? Are they going to arrive on day one with all of everything that I need? Their CV says they will. We'll employ them because we want that sort of quick fix. And I can understand that. But if you want someone who's going to stay for the long term, you have to think about, well, what would they be doing if I want them to stay for 3 years? What are they going to be doing in 3 years' time? And what evidence can I find that they're going to be able to, adapt and do that? So it's just a different way of thinking about it. And I think it is difficult with recruitment because all of us have been through a recruitment process to get a job. And, if you don't do it all the time, then you're just going to go back to what you went through. Or maybe you've hired an absolute superstar employee and it's like, well, it didn't work for them, so we'll just look for the same again.